The silence in the grand ballroom crushed against my chest like a physical weight. 300 faces turned toward me in unison, expressions morphing from polite interest to shock. The crystal chandeliers suddenly felt too bright, too exposing. My hand froze midair, water glass suspended inches from my lips. After thorough investigation, we've identified who diverted funds meant for children's education programs, announced Percy, the foundation president, his voice reverberating through the charity gala, his finger pointed directly at me, unwavering and accusatory. My mind raced to process what was happening. This emergency board meeting had been called suddenly, interrupting our annual fundraiser. Major donors sat at tables adorned with centerpieces representing the rural communities we served. Adina, my department head, stood beside Percy. Her emerald dress complemented her calculated composure as she addressed the stunned crowd. "I noticed unusual patterns in her proposals recently," she said, voice dripping with practiced concern, "but never imagined she would redirect donor money." She turned toward me, eyes gleaming with something that looked remarkably like satisfaction. 8 years of dedication to helping underserved communities collapsed around me like a house of cards. The whispers began, rippling through the ballroom. Security approached from both sides. Men I'd greeted cheerfully every morning for years now, avoiding my gaze. "This is absurd," I managed, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "I never diverted any funds. The opposite. I've been questioning where the technology lab money—" "Please don't make this more difficult," Adina interrupted, her voice tight with false compassion. "The evidence is conclusive." As they escorted me toward the exit, past tables of wide-eyed donors and colleagues, I caught sight of the board members who had flown in specifically for this meeting. Their expressions ranged from disappointment to disgust. I planted my feet firmly on the marble floor, forcing the security guards to pause. "Before you close this case," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "there's something in my attorney's office you need to see." Adina's smile flickered for just a moment, a microsecond of uncertainty before her mask of concern returned. I was guided through the service exit, past kitchen staff, who turned away uncomfortably. The cool night air hit my face as the heavy door closed behind me, cutting off the murmurs and gasps that had followed my departure. Standing alone on the empty sidewalk, I realized my career, reputation, and life's purpose had just been shattered by the woman who was supposed to be my mentor. Before I continue this story, if you're connecting with this moment, that sickening feeling when betrayal hits you in public, take a second to hit like and subscribe. I share these real-life stories so none of us feel alone in our darkest moments. Comment below if you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted. Now, let me take you back to how this nightmare began. My name is Willa, and until that night, I was the Innovation Director at the Childhood Promise Foundation, an organization dedicated to bringing educational resources to underserved communities. I'd built my entire adult life around this work, starting as an intern and working my way up through dedication and results. I wasn't the typical nonprofit employee. Growing up in a small town with limited resources myself, I understood firsthand what access to education could mean. My approach was always practical, focused on direct impact rather than optics. While others chased publicity, I chased results. 6 months before that fateful gala, I had created an approach that changed everything. My Direct Connection initiative eliminated layers of bureaucracy, connecting wealthy donors directly with the communities they wanted to help. It was transparent, efficient, and most importantly, trackable. When I first presented the concept during our strategy meeting, Adina dismissed it immediately. "Willa, darling," she said, tapping her pen against the conference table. "Donors don't want that level of involvement. They write checks for the warm feelings, not to receive project updates from school teachers." The team nodded along with her assessment. Adina had that effect on people. Her confidence was contagious. Her vision rarely questioned. "I respectfully disagree," I said. "Our research shows modern philanthropists want transparency. They want to see exactly where their money goes." Adina's smile tightened. "Perhaps we should table this discussion for now." 2 weeks later, everything changed. Gage Richmont, a billionaire tech entrepreneur, visited our offices unexpectedly. During the impromptu tour, he asked pointed questions about accountability and direct impact. "Actually," I said, when he expressed frustration with traditional charity models, "I've been developing a system that might interest you." I showed him my proposal for direct donor community connections, complete with regular video updates from recipients and transparent tracking of every dollar. His eyes lit up. "This is exactly what I've been looking for." When can we implement this for the Rural Technology Labs project? Suddenly, my innovation became Adina's flagship initiative. The transformation was breathtaking. Willa's concept, which I've been helping her refine, is revolutionary. Adina told the board the following week, her arm draped around my shoulders. The same proposal she had dismissed was now our groundbreaking approach. I should have recognized the warning signs when she began making subtle alterations to my program structure. The direct video updates became quarterly instead of monthly. The transparent fund tracking portal gained additional approval layers. When I questioned these changes, Adina smiled coldly across her desk. Perhaps the complexities of major philanthropy are beyond your understanding. These adjustments optimize donor satisfaction while maintaining operational flexibility. Operational flexibility undermines our promise of transparency, I argued. Transparency is a marketing concept, not a practical approach, she replied, turning back to her computer. I've approved the modified plan. Please implement it as revised. Walking back to my office, I noticed people watching me, curious glances from colleagues who quickly looked away when our eyes met. Over the next few months, troubling patterns emerged. Funds earmarked for specific schools were mysteriously reassigned. Community partners we'd worked with for years were suddenly replaced with new organizations I'd never heard of. Project timelines extended without explanation. During a team meeting, Adina stared directly at me while addressing the group. True charitable vision requires absolute authority. Some handle this responsibility gracefully. Others clearly cannot. The message was unmistakable. Questions weren't welcome. Then came the call that changed everything. The principal from Lakeview Rural School contacted me directly, confused about the technology lab their students had been promised. Mr. Richmont visited last week, expecting to see the computers and equipment, she explained. We had to tell him nothing had arrived. He seemed surprised. My stomach tightened. Nothing arrived? The equipment was scheduled for delivery last month. We were told funds had been reallocated to more urgent needs, she said, by your department. After the call, I pulled up the project files. The delivery confirmation showed a signature, not from Lakeview School, but from a warehouse address I didn't recognize. The authorization for change bore my initials, but I had never approved it. I printed the documents and walked to Adina's office, determined to understand what was happening. Through her partially open door, I heard her speaking on the phone. Absolutely. The Westside Academy showcase is coming together beautifully, she was saying. Mr. Richmont will be impressed with how we've implemented his vision. The other locations are proceeding on an adjusted timeline. Westside Academy wasn't part of our rural initiative. It was an already well-funded school in an affluent neighborhood, where, coincidentally, several potential new major donors had children enrolled. I knocked and entered, documents in hand. We need to discuss the Lakeview Technology Lab immediately. Adina ended her call, her expression shifting from annoyance to practiced concern. Willa, I was just about to find you. We have a situation that requires discretion. Lakeview never received their equipment, I said, and somehow my initials are on paperwork I never signed. Lower your voice, she hissed, closing her office door. These allocation adjustments were necessary. Richmont's vision was impractical, spreading resources too thinly. By consolidating, we create showcase examples of success. That wasn't his vision or intention, I countered. He specifically wanted to help under-resourced rural schools. Her expression hardened. The board has approved my strategic redistribution. Your signature is there because you're part of this department. Team decisions reflect on all of us. This isn't ethical. I'm going to speak with Percy. Her laugh was soft and dangerous. With what evidence? Your word against documentation? Against the team members who'll confirm you were in all the planning meetings? She leaned forward. Be smart, Willa. This is how major philanthropy works. The money still helps children, just in ways that maximize our foundation's growth potential. I left her office shaking with anger and something else. Fear. That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying conversations and meetings in my mind, looking for where I had missed the signs. The next morning, I discovered my access to certain financial databases had been restricted. System update, the IT department explained weakly. Days later, an internal audit was announced. With growing dread, I watched as Adina herself led the investigation, presenting modified program outlines bearing my initials, coaching junior staff about approval conversations that had never happened. Mira, my assistant, cornered me in the break room, voice low. Willa, something strange is happening. Adina asked me to confirm you had approved the reallocation plans. When I said I wasn't in those meetings, She suggested my memory might be confused, and that acknowledging my error would be better for my future here. That afternoon, I received a calendar invitation for the upcoming charity gala, with a note that board members would be present for a special announcement. The pieces were falling into place. I was being set up. That evening, I called the one person I knew I could trust completely, my old law school roommate Tess, now a formidable attorney, specializing in nonprofit governance. Don't confront anyone else, she advised after hearing my story. Don't try to access any more records internally. Come to my office tomorrow. Bring whatever documentation you already have. Will that be enough? I asked. It won't be just your documentation we'll need, Tess replied cryptically. I have some calls to make. For now, act normal. Can you do that? I agreed, unaware that in less than 2 weeks, I would be standing alone on a sidewalk outside the charity gala, publicly disgraced and professionally ruined. What I didn't know then was that the path to redemption had already begun, and that Adina's carefully constructed deception was about to encounter something she never anticipated, the truth preserved by people she had overlooked and underestimated. As security walked away, leaving me alone in the darkness, my phone buzzed with a text from Tess. It's happening, hold steady. The game wasn't over, it was just beginning. The taxi ride to Tess's downtown office felt endless. Streetlights blurred through my tears as I replayed the humiliation of being escorted out. My phone buzzed constantly, colleagues expressing shock, friends asking what happened, reporters seeking comment. I silenced it. Tess was waiting outside her building, her expression grim but determined. She guided me through a side entrance, away from potential prying eyes. They moved faster than we anticipated, she said, leading me into a conference room. But we're not unprepared. I expected an empty room. Instead, I found 7 people waiting, faces I recognized immediately. Pastor Lloyd from the Lakeview Community Center, Principal Jenkins from Riverdale Elementary, community organizer Zephyr from the Highland District, 4 others from rural communities that had been promised resources through my program. What are they doing here? I whispered to Tess. Before she could answer, Pastor Lloyd rose from his seat. When Miss Tess called explaining what was happening, we came immediately, he said. What that woman is doing isn't right. Those computers were promised to children who've never had proper learning tools. Principal Jenkins nodded. Mr. Richmont visited our school expecting to see the technology lab. We had to tell him nothing had arrived. Then we got a strange call claiming funds were redistributed due to your recommendation. We knew that couldn't be true. Zephyr leaned forward. We've been documenting everything, Willa. Every promise, every meeting, every changed plan. We've worked with charities for decades. We know when something doesn't add up. For the first time since the gala, hope flickered in my chest. Tess opened a folder. We're building a case, but we need to move quickly. The foundation will try to contain this, portray you as a disgruntled employee, making baseless accusations. What can we actually prove? I asked. More than Adina realizes, Tess replied. These community leaders have records of every original commitment. They've documented when plans changed and who authorized those changes. But we need more. Pastor Lloyd cleared his throat. There's something else. After Mr. Richmont's visit, he gave me his personal phone number, said to call him directly if there were any more complications. My eyes widened. You have direct contact with Gage Richmont? Called him this morning. Pastor Lloyd nodded. He's quite disturbed by what's happening. Tess's phone rang. Her expression changed as she answered. Yes, I see. Thank you for the update. She hung up and turned to me. The foundation is releasing a statement tomorrow. They're claiming you diverted funds to shell accounts over the past 4 months. That's impossible, I protested. I don't even have authorization for. They have paperwork with your signature, Tess interrupted. Or what appears to be your signature. The room spun around me. They're framing me for exactly what Adina's been doing. Classic misdirection, Tess said. We need to move faster than planned. Over the next 2 days, we built our case. Community leaders provided documentation showing the original commitments versus what actually happened. Tess obtained copies of Foundation communications through legal channels. Pastor Lloyd arranged a confidential meeting with Gage Richmont. When the tech billionaire walked into Tess's office, his usual confident demeanor was replaced by cold anger. I visited 3 schools last week, he said without preamble. None received the technology I funded. When I questioned your department head, she told me implementation was proceeding on an adjusted timeline. Then I hear you've been terminated for fund misappropriation. His piercing gaze met mine. I want to know what's actually happening. For 2 hours, We laid out everything: the original program design, how Adina had systematically altered it, the paper trail of modified documents, the community testimonials. Richmond's expression darkened with each revelation. I chose your foundation because of the direct connection model you presented. The transparency was the entire point. He tapped his fingers on the table. And now they're saying you stole the money? They've created a paper trail implicating me, I explained. Somehow they've fabricated approvals with my signature. Electronic signatures can be investigated, he said. Server access logs can be examined. He pulled out his phone. I have certain resources at my disposal. A flicker of hope sparked in my chest, but experience had taught me to be cautious. The foundation has already judged me. The board believes I'm guilty. Boards can change their minds when presented with compelling evidence. Tess interjected. We're requesting an emergency hearing, but getting that hearing proved challenging. Percy, the foundation president, refused our initial requests. Media stories painted me as the disgruntled employee making desperate accusations. Former colleagues stopped returning my calls. My apartment building manager awkwardly explained that, given recent events, I might want to consider relocating when my lease ended. My mother called in tears. Having seen my name in the news, my life was unraveling. A week after my public disgrace, Adina gave an interview to a prominent philanthropy journal, expressing her profound disappointment in discovering my betrayal after years of mentorship. She positioned herself as the vigilant leader who uncovered corruption, announcing a new, ultra-transparent initiative that would restore donor trust. It was my program, rebranded, with her as its champion. That evening, I sat in Tess's office, reading the interview transcript, my hands shaking. She's stolen everything: my work, my reputation, my future. I threw the papers down. No one's even willing to hear our side. Tess remained calm. Actually, that changed about an hour ago. She slid a formal letter across the desk. The foundation board has agreed to meet with us tomorrow morning. I stared at her. What? Why now? Let's just say Mr. Richmond has considerable influence, she replied with a hint of a smile. And he's been making calls. For the first time in days, I felt a surge of something beyond despair. The next morning we arrived at foundation headquarters. Security eyed me warily as Tess presented our meeting authorization. We were escorted to the executive conference room, where the entire board waited. Percy sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Adina sat beside him, projecting confident composure, though I noticed her fingers tapping restlessly against her water glass. We've agreed to this unusual meeting out of respect for Mr. Richmond, Percy began. However, I want to be clear that the evidence against Miss Willa is substantial and has been thoroughly reviewed. Adina nodded sympathetically. We understand this is difficult, but the documentation is conclusive. Tess remained standing. We appreciate your time. Rather than making accusations, we'd like to simply present some information for the board's consideration. The door opened, and in walked Pastor Lloyd, Principal Jenkins, Zephyr, and 4 other community leaders. The same group from Tess's office. Behind them came Gage Richmond, his expressions stern. Adina's composure slipped momentarily. What is this? These are the intended recipients of the diverted funds, Tess explained calmly. They'd like to share their experiences directly. For the next hour, each community representative described their interactions with the foundation, the original promises made, the subsequent changes imposed by Adina, the explanations given when resources failed to arrive. We were told funding was reallocated on Willa's recommendation, Pastor Lloyd explained. But Willa had been fighting for us to receive those resources all along. She visited our community center weekly, tracking implementation. Principal Jenkins produced emails showing Adina redirecting equipment deliveries away from their school after telling them Willa had changed the distribution plan. The board members' expressions shifted from skepticism to concern as the pattern became clear. Then Richmond stepped forward. I personally visited these communities. Nothing promised was delivered. When I questioned this, I was told there were adjusted timelines. Meanwhile, I received invitations to tour showcase projects at Westside Academy, a school not on the original recipient list. Adina's face paled slightly, but she rallied. These allocation adjustments were strategic decisions to maximize impact. The documentation clearly shows Willa authorized. About that documentation, Richmond interrupted. My security team conducted a forensic analysis of your foundation's servers. He placed a folder on the table. Electronic signatures on critical documents were applied using Willa's credentials, but the access logs show her account was used at times when she was verifiably elsewhere, including during a presentation she gave to my staff, with me present. The room fell silent. Furthermore, he continued, the diverted funds were not sent to personal accounts in Willa's name, as alleged. They were redirected to foundation-approved projects in affluent districts. The projects overseen exclusively by Miss Adina. Percy opened the folder, scanning its contents with growing alarm. Other board members leaned forward, whispering among themselves. Adina's smile remained fixed, but her eyes darted around the room. These technical reports can be misinterpreted. The Foundation's financial protocols are complex. We also have this, Tess said, producing a sealed envelope. Financial records showing a pattern of similar redirections over the past 18 months, beginning well before Willa's direct connection model was implemented. As the evidence mounted, Adina's composure finally cracked. Everything I did was for the Foundation's benefit. Showcasing our work in prominent communities attracts more donors. It's strategic thinking, not misconduct. The board called for a brief recess. As they filed out, Adina approached me, her voice low and urgent. This is a misunderstanding that's gotten out of hand, she whispered. We can fix this together. I can bring you back with a promotion, more responsibility. We need your vision, Willa. I looked into the eyes of the woman who had destroyed my reputation without hesitation. I trusted you. Business isn't personal, she replied smoothly. I recognize the potential in your ideas. Isn't implementation what matters most? Think about the communities we can help together. For a moment, I wavered. Despite everything, the work still mattered to me. The children waiting for educational resources were real. Before I could respond, the board members returned. Percy's expression was grim. In light of this new information, the board is suspending its previous findings regarding Willa, he announced. We will conduct a complete review of all documentation and projects under Miss Adina's management. Adina stepped forward. This is unnecessary. Additionally, Percy continued as if she hadn't spoken. Miss Adina is being placed on administrative leave effective immediately, pending investigation. The blood drained from her face. You can't do this. My reputation is exactly what's at stake, Percy finished. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. As Adina was led away, she turned to me one last time, her eyes burning with a mixture of rage and disbelief. This isn't over, she hissed. She was right about one thing. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because despite this momentary victory, I knew the Foundation's investigation would be internal, limited, designed to minimize public damage. Adina would likely negotiate a quiet resignation, perhaps with a positive recommendation to protect the Foundation's image. She would simply move to another organization and continue her deception. Unless, of course, someone had been planning for this moment all along. Someone who understood that institutional justice had limitations and had prepared accordingly. As we left the Foundation building, Tess squeezed my arm. Phase 1 complete. Are you ready for what comes next? I nodded, thinking about the safe deposit box I'd opened 6 months earlier. The first day I'd noticed something wasn't right with the program allocations. I'm ready, I replied, feeling a strange calm settle over me. It's time. The next morning, my phone rang at 6:37 a.m. The Foundation's head of HR wanted to meet immediately. The board stayed up all night reviewing records, she explained when I arrived. They've unanimously voted to reinstate you, with a formal apology and compensation for damages to your reputation. I sat across from her, aware of the irony. The same room where I'd been interrogated about financial irregularities a week earlier now hosted my vindication. And Adina? I asked. Terminated for cause, the preliminary audit revealed, concerning patterns. Victory should have felt sweeter. Instead, a hollow feeling spread through my chest. My name might be cleared within these walls, but mud sticks in the nonprofit world. Whispers follow you. The stain of accusation never fully washes away. Percy entered, extending his hand. We've made a terrible mistake, Willa. The board hopes you'll consider returning, with a promotion. We'd like you to take over as department head. The offer was tempting, a chance to implement my vision without obstruction. But the Foundation's quick pivot felt calculated. They needed to contain the damage, preserve donor confidence. My reinstatement was damage control, not justice. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully, but I'll need time to consider. Outside, Tess waited in her car. How did it go? Exactly as you predicted. They're desperate to make this disappear. She nodded. And your decision? I'm not sure taking Adina's position is enough. I stared out the window. She destroyed my reputation publicly. Administrative leave and a quiet firing doesn't balance the scales. That's why we have phase 2. Tess pulled into traffic. The evidence we presented yesterday? That was just enough to convince the board. We have much more. At her office, we found Richmond waiting with Pastor Lloyd and Zephyr. The foundation called me this morning, Richmond said without preamble. They're very concerned about my continued support. Suddenly, everyone's extremely apologetic. They're in containment mode, Tess explained, spreading documents across the table. They'll do internal damage control, keep this quiet, and within 6 months, Adina will have a position at another organization, probably with a glowing recommendation to avoid legal complications. Pastor Lloyd shook his head. So she gets away with diverting resources from children who needed them? Not if we proceed with phase 2, Tess replied, looking at me. But that decision belongs to Willa. All eyes turned to me. What exactly is phase 2? Richmond asked. I took a deep breath. Full transparency. For the next 3 hours, we strategized. My hands trembled occasionally, doubts creeping in. Was this justice or vengeance? Would I become like Adina, destroying someone's career? The difference, I reminded myself, was truth. We weren't fabricating evidence or twisting facts. We were simply ensuring the complete story reached those who needed to know. That afternoon, I declined the foundation's offer, requesting instead a consulting arrangement to ensure the rural schools finally received their promised resources. The board agreed immediately, eager to demonstrate their commitment to making things right. Meanwhile, Tess coordinated with community leaders, gathering additional documentation. Richmond arranged meetings with key industry figures. Phase 2 took shape methodically, carefully. 2 days later, Adina called me. This has all been a terrible misunderstanding, she said, her voice artificially warm. The board overreacted based on incomplete information. I've always valued your contributions, Willa. Is that why you framed me for financial misconduct? I asked quietly. Strong language for a complex situation, she countered smoothly. Look, we both know how this industry works. I've already had calls from 3 organizations interested in my expertise. I'll land on my feet. My grip tightened on the phone. What do you want, Adina? Your silence, basically. In exchange, I'll ensure you receive proper credit for the direct connection model in my future work. We both win. I nearly laughed at her audacity. I'll consider it. Don't take too long, these offers won't wait forever. She paused. One more thing. I noticed you declined the department head position. Smart move. The foundation is a sinking ship anyway. Perhaps we could discuss opportunities elsewhere. Your vision, combined with my connections, could be profitable. After hanging up, I called Tess. She's already lining up new positions. She just offered to take me with her. Perfect, Tess replied. That confirms she's actively seeking placement. Time for phase 2. Over the next week, a quiet campaign began. Community leaders contacted peer organizations in their networks, sharing their experiences working with Adina. Richmond spoke privately with fellow philanthropists who might be approached for donations. Tess prepared information packets with meticulously documented evidence. We weren't broadcasting accusations. We were simply ensuring decision-makers had complete information before welcoming Adina into their organizations. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The foundation implemented my original program as designed, with the rural schools finally receiving their technology labs. I worked as a consultant, overseeing proper implementation while considering my next steps. Then came the call from Adina I'd been expecting. What have you done? Her voice trembled with rage. I'm not sure what you mean, I replied calmly. Don't play innocent. 3 job offers suddenly withdrawn. Connections who won't return my calls. Organizations that were practically begging for my expertise now claim positions have been filled. Her breathing was ragged. You're blacklisting me. I haven't made any public statements about you. You've been talking to people, spreading your version of events. I've simply been honest when asked, I replied. Something you might consider trying. Her laugh was bitter. You self-righteous hypocrite. You're destroying my career while pretending to take the high road. No, Adina. You destroyed your career when you diverted resources meant for children who had nothing. When you fabricated evidence against me. When you betrayed every principle of the work we were supposed to be doing. The silence stretched between us before she spoke again, her voice deadly calm. I underestimated you. That won't happen again. Days later, I learned Adina had secured a position with a small foundation in another state. Apparently, my network hadn't reached everywhere. I felt a twinge of disappointment but reminded myself this was about accountability, not destruction. Life began settling into a new rhythm. I received offers from respected organizations, but none felt right. The scars from betrayal hadn't fully healed. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. 4 months after the gala that changed everything, I received an invitation that made my heart stop. The International Philanthropy Alliance was holding their annual conference, and they wanted me to present my direct connection model as an industry innovation. "You should do it," Tess urged when I called her. "Reclaim your work publicly." The conference was held in a gleaming hotel ballroom, not unlike the one where I'd been humiliated months earlier. As I prepared backstage, a familiar voice froze me in place. Quite the comeback story. Adina stood in the doorway, elegant as always in a tailored suit. Something had changed in her demeanor, a hardness around her eyes, a tightness in her smile. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I was invited to speak on panel about innovation in fundraising." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Ironic, isn't it? Despite your efforts, I've landed at Horizon Giving Project. Smaller than I'm accustomed to, but they value my experience." My stomach tightened. "Congratulations." "Don't worry, I've learned my lesson about taking ideas." She stepped closer. "But you should know, this isn't over. You'll slip eventually. Everyone does. And I'll be watching." Before I could respond, she walked away, leaving me shaken. My presentation received a standing ovation. Organizations lined up to discuss implementation of the direct connection model. Throughout it all, I felt Adina's eyes tracking me from across the room. That evening, Richmond found me at the reception. "Impressive presentation," he said. "Though I'm concerned about your former colleague's presence, she's been talking to potential donors, including several from my circle." I nodded. "She's resilient. Found a position at Horizon Giving." "Horizon?" His eyebrow raised. "Interesting choice." "What do you mean?" "Nothing specific," he replied carefully. "Though if she's approaching my colleagues for donations, perhaps I should open my safe as well." His words echoed in my mind. My safe. The safe deposit box I'd opened months ago, where I'd stored evidence I hadn't yet needed to use. Later that night, I called Tess. "It's time for phase 3. Are you certain?" she asked. "This goes beyond professional consequences." She threatened me today. She's continuing to build relationships with major donors. Nothing has changed except her target organization. The next morning, I retrieved the contents of my safe deposit box. Inside was everything I'd been saving since first noticing discrepancies in Adina's management, including evidence too damaging to use for mere professional vindication. 3 days later, Adina's new employers received a package containing financial records from her previous positions before the Childhood Promise Foundation. Records showing a consistent pattern spanning 8 years and 4 organizations, diverted funds, altered records, projects claimed as successes that never materialized. The documentation was comprehensive, irrefutable: emails, transfer records, testimony from former colleagues who'd been silenced through intimidation or incentives. Most damning was the proof that she'd been skimming from the diverted funds, small amounts, carefully hidden, transferred through a complex web of personal accounts. Not enough to trigger automatic alerts, but substantial over time. The Nonprofit Oversight Board received identical documentation. So did the State Attorney General's office. Within a week, Adina was not merely fired. She was under investigation. Her fundraising credentials were permanently revoked. The Philanthropy Alliance canceled her speaking engagements and rescinded her previous industry awards. When the story broke in nonprofit circles, previous employers launched their own investigations, finding similar patterns that had gone undetected or been covered up. 6 major donors publicly withdrew support from any initiative connected to her name. Her carefully constructed professional persona crumbled like a sandcastle at high tide. 9 months after that fateful gala, my phone rang with an unknown number. "I'm stuffing envelopes as a volunteer because no one will hire me," Adina said, her voice breaking. "Please tell them I was trying to maximize donor impact. I made mistakes, but my career in nonprofit work is over." I listened to her plea in silence. "I never took that much," she continued desperately. "Just small consulting fees for directing funds strategically. Everyone does it to some degree. Please, Willa. I learned something valuable from you," I said quietly. "Always keep something in your safe. Goodbye." Last month, I delivered the keynote at the International Philanthropy Summit, where years earlier, Adina had dismissed my approach as naively simplistic. As I accepted the Humanitarian Innovation Award, I spotted her among the convention staff, collecting name badges at the registration desk. Our eyes met briefly before she turned away. My direct connection model has now been adopted by charities worldwide. I rebuilt my career by implementing the transparency principles Adina once called unnecessary and cumbersome, but now define ethical philanthropy. The rural schools received their technology labs, and much more. Pastor Lloyd sends me videos of children using computers for the first time. Principal Jenkins reports improved test scores and attendance. Real impact for real communities. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if vengeance became my motivation rather than justice. But then I remember the children who waited for resources that never came because someone saw them as less valuable than wealthy donors' opinions. I remember standing alone on that sidewalk, professionally destroyed, while Adina watched from inside the ballroom, smiling. The truth was always in my safe. I just needed the courage to open it. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, I hope my story gives you strength. Sometimes justice takes patience, evidence, and the willingness to stand firm when it would be easier to walk away. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real experiences. Share your own stories of standing up to workplace injustice in the comments. We grow stronger when we know we're not alone. Remember, your truth matters. Keep it safe, but don't be afraid to reveal it when necessary.